Hi there, everybody. Welcome to our second interview. My name is Shayna.
I'm Jerusha.
And I'm Clint.
And Clint is our next interview, and he is a casting director. We're so excited to ask all of our kids questions. To give everybody a little bit of background, Jerusha and I founded the I Can Do That Theater Company 4 years ago, and we are right now in the process of creating a 6,000 square foot youth center in downtown Danville, where we use the power of community, wellness programming, and the performing arts to fuel our youth. It's something we're very passionate about and excited to have getting off the ground. We're supposed to open our doors September 1st, 2020, and we're on track for that, so that's pretty exciting. And we met Clint in college, right after college. How did this all happen? Do we all remember?
It was before.
Yeah, high school, right?
Yeah.
We kind of grew up together.
Kind of, yeah. So, I was working at the Dean Lesher Regional Center,
Yes.
and you guys were coming in and out doing Belasco and all that kind of stuff. And then we really kind of got to know each other through Venus Rising.
Mm-hmm.
So we did a bunch of shows together with Venus Rising, Cabaret, Pippin, On the Town, Assassins,
Yes.
all those.
Yeah.
And that was where we got to know each other. And then I went off to New York for school.
Yeah, and we actually all ended up going to New York right at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can tell everyone because we went to the same college.
Yeah, we both went to Marymount Manhattan.
Yeah.
I was a transfer student, so I transferred in, and but we were all there the same year because you started as freshmen.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Awesome. And this sort of leads us into the first question that we have, which is from one of our students, Sophia, and she's just wondering, how did you become a casting director? What kind of took you from in college on?
No, absolutely. So it's interesting, I think, so I grew up in middle school. I was doing drama, all that kind of stuff. Took a bit of a pause, beginning of high school, went through that whole kind of existential crisis of like, I want to be one of the cool kids. Like, I don't want to be a drama nerd, this, that, and the other. And then realized like towards the end of high school that drama nerds are my people. Yeah. And so therefore then finally got back into theater again, my junior year of high school. And a friend of mine that I ended up doing follow spot for the musical that fall, or that spring. And then a friend of mine told me, there's a bunch of teen theater stuff going on in Walnut Creek. And that was how I found out about Stars 2000, which then brought me to Walnut Creek and to the Lesher Center, which is where I got to know all of you guys. And so, I ended up through, meeting you guys, working at the Lesher Center, deciding I wanted to go to New York to pursue theater, auditioned for schools, got into NYU, very, very expensive. So ended up at Marymount Manhattan because I knew I wanted to go to New York for school. And so I ended up there. I spent 2 years at DVC at junior college doing, general ed credits and all that kind of stuff to transfer so that, again, don't have to spend 4 years at, an expensive university.
Exactly.
So transferred to Marymount, got out there, and then whilst in, theater school, I was getting my BFA, realized that ultimately performing wasn't really my passion. I loved being involved in the process. I loved being in the room and working with actors, but ultimately it wasn't my passion to perform. And so once I realized that, I transitioned from a BFA to a BA program, so I started taking more acting classes, and then started interning in various facets of the industry to sort of figure out where I fit. And so I interned at a talent agency, I interned at a management production company, and then my last year in school, interned for a feature film casting director. And that was sort of where I had my like aha moment, or the light bulb went on, and I was like, oh, got it. So all of the stuff that I've been naturally doing in all of my scene study classes with my classmates, sort of like appraising their work and all of that, there's a job for that. The fact that I can never remember a character name, but can remember every actor's name and the last 5 things that they did, that's actually a marketable skill for what I do, And so, once I realized that, I just went full steam ahead. And so interned at that office for my last 7-8 months of school. And then right after graduation, got hired by another office, a television casting director, it's actually a duo, Beth Bowling and Kim Misha. They gave me my first paying job in casting, and then worked with them for about 2 years. And then briefly worked with a feature film casting director named Cassandra Koulakundis, who does all of Paul Thomas Anderson's movies. And then got a call from a friend of mine who's a manager and said, hey, there's an opening at this, network casting office. You should send your stuff over. And so I did. And yeah, I've been working at my office now for almost 15 years now. And I've been the head of that office for the past 8 years. So, yeah.
Incredible.
Awesome. Yeah.
So cool.
So a lot of our students are wondering, there's a lot of questions about what you are looking for. And I know it depends on the project, but, specifically, Lucy wants to know what you look for in actors and actresses. And more specifically, Andrew's wondering what you look for if you're casting kids specifically.
So, yeah, I mean, I get this question a lot, and I think ultimately what we're looking for are, for actors to bring in interesting choices, and I always say interesting choices because sometimes when I hear people talk about sort of the audition process, I hear people say things like, we want big choices, we want bold choices. And sometimes I think actors can sort of misconstrue that idea into, we want you to have some kind of crazy take on the role or the scene in order to stand out as being different, which is another sort of one of those talking points that kind of gets pounded into actors' heads over and over and over again. And I think, like I said, sometimes that can get misinterpreted. And I think, we don't need you to come in with a Cockney accent and like a limp or whatever in order to sort of make some bold, crazy choice on the character or some crazy take on the scene that doesn't really make sense, for the purposes of standing out as being different, because you will stand out, but not necessarily in the best way. And I think that ultimately what you want to be looking for are, you need to trust that everyone's an individual. Your own experience is going to be what's going to inform the choices that you're going to make in the scene, and let that confidence that you are going to have your own unique take just inherently because everyone's different and everyone's experiences are different, and let that be what brings you into the room, and just make the choices based on that, and that, I think that also, if you put yourself in our shoes as the casting directors or as the directors or the creative team that's watching these auditions, what are we doing? But we're seeing actors come into the room and do the same scene over and over and over and over and over again. So what can stand out to us as bold or big can be something as small and subtle and minute is the way that you take one particular beat within a scene, that one extra moment that you found that nobody else did, or that one moment that you took in a slightly different direction, while still making it work within the context of the scene. That can be enough to make you stand out. And so just trust that you're inherently going to do that, because you've done the work, you've prepared, and you've made your choices, but don't say, oh, this is the obvious choice that everyone else is going to do, so I'm going to make this other choice that's going to be different, because that involves you making a choice that has nothing to do with what's going on in the scene or what's right for the character, and is more based on your preconceptions of what you think everyone else is going to do. And that's the worst reason to make a choice for a scene.
I have a question actually. So when you're in the room bringing people in for a certain role, one, how many people are you usually seeing per role, and who else is in the room with you? Like, is it just you in the room, or is there a panel?
So the short answer is I see as many people as it takes to cast the role. But the longer answer is that, it depends on the type of role, the specificity of the role. If I'm looking for, a 20-year-old college person, I could see, 100 girls a day every day for the next 2 years, and not see the same girl twice, because it's very general, it's very open. Whereas if I'm looking for a 65-year-old Middle Eastern man who speaks Farsi, that's a very sort of much more concentrated talent pool of actors who are represented or who are working within the community, and so that it's going to, the number of people, it's going to change based on the specificity of the role. But the larger answer is that you see as many people as it takes to cast the role, There was another part of the question, I forget.
Like, who else, is there anybody else on the panel? Like,
oh, yeah. So, for my office specifically, I work as a remote satellite office for a larger network. So the majority of the creative team are watching tapes that I am doing. There will occasionally be situations where they'll have producers fly in for a few sessions or for screen tests or callbacks. But for the most part, it's usually me working in the room with the actors. And it's based off of concept meetings that we're having with the creative teams to discuss, how do they see these roles? Where are they going to be in series? What are their sort of prototypes? Who are they thinking of when they wrote these characters? To give us sort of a jumping off point as to where we should start looking in terms of the types of actors that we see initially. And then we sort of go from there. But yeah, for the most part, we're looking at, it's just me in the room. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that sort of leads me to, how do you get to the final decision? Talia wants to know, how do you know who the right person is for the job?
Well, here's the interesting thing is I think some people think that casting directors are the ultimate decision makers, and we're not. We're the gatekeepers. It is our job to educate ourselves on the talent pool, as it were, and to sort of take the, massive amount of people that are out there trying to pursue this craft, and then sort of distill it down to the people that we think would be most right based on what our creative team has told us that they want, and then show those options to them, and then they decide from there who they ultimately want, and then in terms of sort of what I do as a TV casting person is, depending on the type of role, there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen in terms of who decides who gets these roles. If we're talking about sort of series regular roles, which are the people that are in every single episode of the show that you see in the opening credits and all that kind of stuff, there's a lot of people that are involved in that decision-making process. It's the creative team and the producers, will sort of decide maybe 3 to 5 choices that they really, really respond to, and they'll start what's called a test option deal, where we sign contracts and do the whole thing, and we negotiate all that kind of stuff, and you basically sign your life away for 7 years. And that's, you haven't even gotten the role yet. You're just saying, if you get the role, you've signed away your life for 7 years. And so then they'll show those 3 to 5 choices to a studio that's attached to the project. They will then narrow those choices down further and then send those on to the network. Mm-hmm. And the head of the network makes the ultimate decision as to who gets the series regular role. With like a guest star or something like that, it's a much easier process. It's, the director and the producers will make a choice. They'll send that single choice on to the studio for approval and then the network for approval, and they'll just hire that person. Mm-hmm. But yeah, there's a lot of people involved in the decision-making process as to who gets these roles. Yeah. So yeah, I'm just the gatekeeper. I'm like, I feel passionate about these people. What do you think? And then they say yay or nay. They say, oh, we want something more like this. And then I go back out and I continue looking and I bring them more choices. But I'm the person who's bringing them options.
You're like the matchmaker.
Kind of, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. You might see the connection, but they still know what they want. And
completely, and it's the way that you kind of look at a cast or look at an ensemble is, it's sort of, at least the way I look at it, is almost like a Rubik's Cube. Mm-hmm. Because you get these roles and you have these discussions about what these prototypes are, how they see these roles, but that stuff will change as you sort of start to cast certain roles. Like other roles will start to sort of be affected because you're ultimately creating this ensemble. And so once you've set, the first 2 or 3 roles, the 4th role might look very, very different than it did at that initial concept call, right? Where we talked about it, because you want to create this group, this team that makes sense.
Yeah. Cool. Do you have any, let's see. Well, okay, let me actually go here. Kate wants to know, what are the different skills required for screen acting versus stage acting, in your opinion?
I think, listen, at the end of the day, acting is acting is acting. It's about figuring out how to hone and focus those skills into the medium that you want to be working in, whether it's film, TV, or theater, and obviously the most obvious sort of difference is, with theater, obviously you're playing to the back row, and you want to be able to communicate those moments to every single person that's sitting in that audience. Whereas with on camera stuff, it's a little bit more intimate. You're playing to a lens that is literally feet in front of you, or depending on the shot, sometimes inches in front of you, and you don't need to play to that back row. It'll read is too large or too big or too over the top, and then depending on each performer, it, will some people take to on-camera work from theater like a duck to water, and then some people it's a little bit more of a journey in terms of figuring out how to sort of tone down or bring it down. Some people, really need to really work hard to bring it down, and some people it's just effortless. Some people still need to sort of communicate or bring out those emotions in a way that is still sort of theatrical or reminiscent of like theater.
Right.
And then some people, all it takes is that all they have to do is think it and it comes across, and so it's finding out where you sort of live on that spectrum, and that's part of the process. And some of these schools, some of these undergrad programs are finally starting to sort of get to a place where a lot of programs are now at least incorporating at least maybe 1 or 2 semesters of on-camera work. And then some other places like I know Savannah College of Art and Design, SCAD, they have an on-camera program that is very extensive. That's very good.
Amazing.
Ah, cool. What about, Kate also wants to know, is it necessary to have an agent? Are there places to find auditions? I know there's all different levels to that, but.
Yeah, there's a lot of, so for what I do, because again, primarily what I'm doing is series regulars. I'm working on pilots a lot. I'm most often releasing we call them breakdowns, which is just a list of the description of all the roles that we're currently seeking for whatever we may be looking for, whether it's a pilot or whether it's a specific episode of a television show. We'll release our stuff on breakdowns, which is a service that is provided to agents and managers to be able to submit their clients. So in that regard, access to those, roles are through agents and managers. That website, Breakdown Services is what it's called. They also have another website that they also use called Actors Access, which is where actors can actually put up their own profiles. People who are unrepresented can put their stuff up there, and they will also have access to the same types of breakdowns, but they're oftentimes released by, grad school student filmmakers or people doing independent films and all that kind of stuff. So it'll be a little bit more kind of independent, as opposed to something that has like a studio or a network backed behind it. Largely what I'm doing is releasing on Breakdown Services, but some of those other projects, which are great for resume building, great for getting experience, great for getting stuff to put on your reel. You can find a lot of great stuff through Actors Access. There can be those instances where, again, I'm looking for a role that's so incredibly specific that I know I have to reach out to people directly, that I will release on Actors Access, but for the most part, I'm usually releasing on Breakdown Services. So yeah.
Cool. Thank you for that. Okay, just a couple more. Let me see. Well, Adeline wants to know, well, this is, we've kind of touched on this. What are the most valued traits in a person you are looking to cast?
I think, well, obviously good attitude, because especially for me as a casting person, I am hired and fired based on my taste. I kind of liken what I do to almost like being a chef, where it's like your palate, your taste in actors is sort of your calling card, your signature. And, when I'm sending an actor on to producers for consideration to hire for a role, be it large or small, I'm saying that this person's going to show up, they're going to be professional, they're going to have a great attitude, they're going to be prepared, they're going to do all the things that, I'm putting my seal of approval upon that person. And so, the best traits that we're looking for are people that can bring that into the room and can show me that you are that person that I can count on for, you to ostensibly send to my bosses and say, they're going to do right by me and they're going to do a great job for you. So yeah, I mean, obviously all of those things. And then, in terms of the actual audition itself, people who listen, and I don't just mean the actual scene work itself, which obviously as actors, it is literally your jobs to look, listen, and react. But so many people don't apply that to every other aspect of the audition. From the moment you step off the elevator, or the moment you walk into that office, you need to have that little, you need to have your ears open, and you need to kind of almost have that sixth sense, honed, where you can kind of take the temperature of the office or take the temperature of the room from the moment you walk in and say, oh, how are they feeling today? Like, is this the fifth hour of a 6-hour session are the producers or the director that might be behind the table. I'm speaking generally, not just my office, but I think, has it been a very long day? Do they want you to just kind of come in, do your work and get the heck out? Or sometimes if it's a long day of reading really, really sad or really, really stressful or difficult material, sometimes they just need a break and they just want to shoot the breeze with you for a second before you start auditioning. And sort of being able to kind of read the room and give them what they want on any particular day is something that ultimately people respond to. Because I think the thing I always try to remind actors is that the ultimate, I think the way to take us the win, the way to succeed, or the way to sort of mark your success for an audition is to make that office a fan of your work, so they will continue to bring you in for more work. It shouldn't be to book the job, because statistically speaking, you're not going to book it. We're going to bring in however many people and only one person's going to get the job. So statistically speaking, you're not going to book it. So I think the achievable objective of any audition is to make that office a fan of your work, because if they do become a fan of you and what you do, they will bring you in for anything and everything you are remotely right for until they finally do book you.
Right.
And that's, I think, that's the list you want to be on. That's the objective you want to have. And I think that's the way to sort of like walk through this career with kind of keeping, a good attitude and not getting too beaten down, because it is a lot of no's, before you get your yeses. And it's an endurance kind of job. It requires a lot of endurance. The people that stick with it and the people that continue to do it are the ones that ultimately kind of beat out everybody else, because is hearing no a lot can cause a lot of people to get really discouraged really quickly. And I think the people that are able to kind of persevere are the ones that ultimately do end up succeeding.
Right. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. Wow.
So we'll finish up with this one. Lexi wants to know, what's your favorite part about your job?
Gosh, I mean, it's the easy answer, the being in the room with the actors. I mean, honestly, like if I didn't like you guys, I'd be a pretty miserable human being. I spend 85% of my time in a windowless room with 4 beige walls,
Yeah.
So if I didn't enjoy the actors, I would be a pretty miserable human being. So I genuinely do enjoy spending time with the actors, again, having come from that performance background, and while never pursuing it professionally, like I speak actor fluently, I kind of understand what makes them tick. And, everyone has those off moments, just like how I encouraged you guys all to read the room, it's my job to sort of read the actors that are coming into the room as well. And I don't just mean read lines with them. I also just mean like, sometimes people are just having an off day, and, there are countless times where I've pulled an actor aside and said, hey, why don't we reschedule? Why don't we have you come back in, take the weekend and have you come back in on Monday? Like there's no rush on this. Like take the weekend, and we'll see you on Monday in hopefully a better headspace, because you have to recognize that we're all human beings. Not everyone has a great, has their on day. And yeah, I mean, so yeah, being in the room with the actors is definitely my favorite part of it still. I mean, after 15 years of doing this.
Right, exactly. Well, I'm also wondering, because you did start out as an actor and in theater, and especially like as a kid, in those like middle school, high school years, what, when you're talking to our kids right now, what were the things about theater that or theater people or whatever it is that drew you in? What was it that made theater special that you continued to make this into your lifelong career and love?
I have to say, I think the fact that theater people sort of embrace everyone's uniqueness, and that's something that is celebrated. I feel like so many people, I mean, at least I can speak for my sort of experience going through middle school and high school, there's such like a pressure to fit in, to conform, to like, be like the person that you view as the popular person or whatever. And I think, to find this group of people where the fact that you are unique is what makes you special, and that you don't need to conform to anybody else or anything else. That was, I think, the most attractive part to, sort of me getting into theater and getting into, this industry and this business. And now, I can say that, my job largely is to go out there and find unique and interesting people to tell stories, and to find as many different kinds of unique, interesting people to tell as many different kinds of unique and interesting stories that are out there, and sometimes it's finding the right actor and then a writer like goes, oh my God, I had never even thought that this role could be cast this way. And oh my God, and this takes me in so many different directions as to way that where I can take this character now, because we found this really special person and we can conform the role to match them. And so, yeah, so it's, I think just everyone's uniqueness is ultimately what kind of brought me in and what keeps me here.
I love it. I love it. And I think you're such an incredible example for all of us and for our kids that, you know, we never know where we're going to go. You know, you started off enjoying theater and that was something you're passionate about and you felt like you fit in. Like, I couldn't have known that I was going to teach. Like, I didn't guess that was going to be my direction. But there are so many ways that you can be in the arts and that it can be so incredibly fulfilling. It might look different than how you thought it would
totally.
when you were 12.
Completely. And that's an excellent point. And it's one of those things that I always sort of, it was so interesting, like coming up through this, you know, and I feel like it's a little bit different now, but you know, when we were younger, you know, you thought that really being on stage or being in front of the camera or performing was the only real creative outlet in all of this. Yeah. And then you realize, as you go a little bit further into things, that there's so many other aspects of this industry that are also just as creatively fulfilling, just in different ways. And, you know, I think we're getting to a place now where, you know, sort of the generation of casting people before me, you know, they tended to start in casting a little bit later, like sort of maybe into their like late 20s and all that. I was lucky enough that I found casting while I was still in college, you know, which was, you know, very unique for when I was in college. And now, I mean, I know people that started interning in casting offices when they were in high school because they know it's a thing now. They know it's a job. And so it's something that they've realized that is their passion so much earlier than even I did. And I thought I found it early when I found it in college, you know. So it's really exciting that, you know, people are starting to realize that all of these different aspects of the industry and of the arts are just as creatively fulfilling, whether it be costume design or set design or, you know, lighting design, you know, or casting. That, you know, it doesn't necessarily have to be, you know, the person on stage, the person in front of the camera, and that, you know, we're all part of this machine that makes this end product that, you know, the audience gets to enjoy.
Yeah, it is amazing. I love it. I love it. It's been so nice connecting with you and hearing all of these stories. And you're just a wealth of knowledge. It's a part that I know I don't know a lot about. And it's so interesting. I feel like I can really envision it now and get a little glimpse into what your world is like and what it's like to be an actor coming into your world. So thank you so much for sharing all this
with your time.
Yes.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. It's so good to see you. We're going to say bye. I'll turn off the recording, but we can say it.